Hello again, this is Alex, and I have two new blocks of troops to show you today in my growing Carthaginian army in 28mm. Additionally, I'll talk to you about my basing technique and the materials that I'm using for the large bases that I've been showing off on my channel. First, let's do a quick overview of the units. So, I've created two blocks of Iberian warriors. There's one, and here is the other. Here we have the Caetrati, not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but they're an aggressively posed set of swordsmen, also wielding heavy javelins. And I placed these guys in a looser order than most troops of the line that I've done so far. And I've made them into the most dynamically posed of my units as well. So a group of them here near the front have just cast off their heavy javelins, and they're rushing to charge their encumbered or wavering foes with sharp swords and war cries. They're intended to depict an aggressive, fast infantry with very dangerous javelins, and also fine swordsmanship. Alright, the second block of troops here, they carry long shields, or scutums, and they're called Scutarii. To me, they represent warriors of the line, or of the Iberians at least, such as the Edetani. And other than the shields, they're equipped with the same arms and armor as the first unit that I just showed you. But I've placed them here in close order, not ranked up in neat lines, but they're relatively closely spaced, as you can see. So let's talk about the kits that I used here. So I used two kits, both from Victrix. They're the armored Iberian warriors and the unarmored Iberian warriors. Here, this is the unarmored version, and this is the armored version. And so the kits are nearly identical. The only big difference between the two of them is, as the name suggests, one is armored and the other is not. But the poses for the soldiers are the same between the two of them. The only thing that's really different is that the armored warriors have these heart guards, these breastplates that provide some form of protection. So the kits have some pros and cons, and the main sprue, which I just showed you, has 6 figures on it, and half of them are what I would consider to be extremely active, and the other half rank up well. So for the active ones, we got this guy here striding forward, and then we have this guy here really lunging forward, as if he's striking or throwing a javelin, and also this guy in the middle is, pulling back and looks like he's throwing a javelin. So two of them also have heads attached already, which really limits the customizability of the kit, I think. And if you have, half of your kit in these really active poses, it kind of limits the ability for you to create formed ranks. But of course, not everyone is going to be using these for that purpose. So I can understand that. So for this reasons, all the guys that are running forward, I used in my Caetrati kit here. Excuse me, in my Caetrati unit, because I didn't think they'd look great in a formed unit. So I just ended up kind of splitting the figures up based on their activity for the most part. An additional limitation is that, for one of these figures here, the only customization we really have is what he's carrying in his hand. Everything else is already fixed, so unless you put him under the knife, he's going to look very much the same. You can put a little crest on him, of course, and change the colors, but he's not really that customizable compared to, say, the other figures in the kit. Alright, so in terms of available weapons, it's reasonably good. As you can see, these guys are armed with all sorts of different weapons, so if you want to equip half your guys with javelins of various types, it's great for that. It's definitely a very javelin-heavy kit. But there's only one fighting spear, but quite a few swords, but you're not going to be able to really make that many spearmen. I pretty much used all the spears I had available to equip some of these Scutarii here with spears. Alright, so let's talk about the basing technique that I use. So I've gotten a lot of comments about, asking me how I base my miniatures, and it's very simple. So I buy these MDF bases from Simon Miller's Big Red Bat Shop. These ones here, as examples. Simon Miller, he wrote To the Strongest Rules. He's been part of the community for a while. And I first saw these bases being used on Martin's channel, Seventh Son. And, like most of the things he shows, I thought they looked really good. So these bases have wavy edges, which helps visually. And it also allows you to slot them in like this, flush with another base. And they each have an orientation, so they don't fit in the other orientation. One thing to keep in mind. So how I design them? Well, I just decide the frontage that I want the unit to be, and then figure out what the depth is based on that frontage. All of my units you can see here have pretty much the same frontage, so I've kept that pretty much constant for the units that I've shown on the channel. And then you figure out what footprint you want, and what I've been doing is adding backing using popsicle sticks. So I've glued together multiple bases here and added some backing to give them a bit of rigidity. And then I place the figures on next. So I try to figure out where I'm going to place each figure exactly to give the look of the unit that I'm looking for. And I glue them on, and then at that point I start adding some pre-mixed sand, such as this. Wait, I'm kind of running low now, but I just put down some watered down white glue and add some sand. And then here I've also done quite a bit of staining, so I'm using a custom wash that I'm using this really cheap brown paint, mixing it with water and creating my own sort of wash, just to add some depth to the base and make it a little bit more of a brownish color. Yeah. So that's pretty much it. I add some tufts at the end. I'm not doing any dry brushing. I'm not doing anything too fancy. So that's how I construct those bases. In terms of the miniature painting, so originally I wanted to experiment with cooler and like neutral colors with my Scutarii unit here, and then use my typical technique for the other unit. And I think I only really partially succeeded. I don't know about you guys, but I rely very heavily on browns and brown washes. So this is a much warmer color here with the reds and the browns. And I do like the look, but if you're not putting a brown wash on brown, it's going to start looking a bit dirty. So I wanted to experiment with some contrast paints, some like gray contrast paints, treated as a wash, or black even, treated as a wash, and see how it looks. And some of the guys say, like right here, I used a nice gray contrast paint to wash out the cloak or the clothing. But when it comes to the skin tones, I'm still using a brown wash with these skin tones. So that means that I'm using more than one wash on the same figure, so I just have to be a bit more careful than I'm normally used to being. Which is why it's a little bit annoying, but I'll keep trying it out. Now I didn't adopt that technique for all of the guys here, as you can probably tell, but definitely for some of them. I was trying to go away from those warm colors and try a little bit cooler. Okay. So let's talk about the character of the units now. So first, the Caetrati here. Here we capture a moment of action right after the first exchange of javelins. Now these warriors, they carry very deadly weapons, such as the all-iron javelins, like this one, called the Soliferum. Sounds to me like a solely iron, Soliferum. I think I'm not sure if that's true, but they also carry Pilum or other related javelins, similar to the Romans. I think that's mostly actually in this kit here, where you can see the Pilum. But anyway, I imagine that being on the receiving end of one of these all-iron javelins is really unpleasant, even if you have a heavy shield. If you throw it well, you can likely pierce heavy wooden shields and either directly wound the soldiers behind them, or just render the shield incapable of use, just because of that added weight that you've placed in it. So these men charge to exploit the chaos of their javelins, and they seek out the enemy in one-on-one duels, or many-on-one duels. I don't think they would fling themselves on ordered, unbroken spearmen. However, much like the tribal warriors from other cultures, I was really trying to capture the eagerness of the individual to display their fighting prowess amongst their compatriots. Each seeks to outdo the other and kill an enemy in conspicuously brave fashion. And for that reason, I think of these men here as younger and less proven than the Scutarii. That's how they're defining their worth and their place in society. So ideally, the enemy would break before the Iberians reach them, and their speed and swords would cut down the enemy. Now, for wargaming purposes, I think these men would normally be classified as a light infantry, maybe even as skirmishers. And I don't think they would stand and fight against formed infantry that withstood their charge. But I do want to think of them as very dangerous warriors with dangerous javelins. They're fast and lightly encumbered. They use hit-and-run tactics, trying to break the enemy. And as part motivation for this, I think of a comment from Caesar in the Civil War. He's talking about how his army was fighting in Iberia against fellow Romans who were fighting in the local fashion. And he said this: "The manner of fighting of Afrianus' soldiers was to come forward briskly against an enemy, and boldly take possession of some post, neither taking care to keep their ranks, nor holding it necessary to fight in a close, compact body. If they found themselves hard pushed, they thought it no dishonor to retire and quit their posts, following in this the custom of the Lusitanians." That's a tribe in Iberia. So, in other words, if you charge these men with a dense phalanx, they're just going to give ground and not be broken or swept off the field, like they might be in a war game. Alright, so the Scutarii, this is a more typical formed unit of the line. The front ranks here are casting their heavy javelins at point-blank range, and because only they in the front rank have the room to do that. A single clan holds the center, wearing dark green clothing. And this would be the type of unit that Hannibal used to such great effect in his campaigns in Italy. And I have them here kind of formed up in a sort of haphazard fashion, kind of a natural fashion. They're not, each man is trusting his own skill. They're not closely minding their ranks. Alright, so these are the two units that I have to show you today. First I provided a little brief overview, then I discussed the kit, then the basing technique and materials that I used, then the way that I painted the miniatures in brief, and finally the character of the units. I plan on finishing up 2 units of Celtic Warriors next, so thank you for joining me, and hope you have a good one.